Sources tell CBS News that South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott is endorsing former President Donald Trump's presidential bid.
The former Republican presidential candidate ended his campaign back in November. Last month, Scott said he did not have plans to endorse anyone in the race anytime soon. The senator is rumored to be among the potential picks to be Trump's running mate.
Let's bring in Matt Gorman now. He is the former senior advisor for Tim Scott's now suspended presidential campaign. Good to have you back with us, Matt. So the big question, why is he endorsing former President Trump right now? Is he interested in the VP job?
Look, I don't work for Senator Scott anymore. I have no inside information on that. But what I will say is, look, I think this is an attractive endorsement for President Trump to have. He loves the state of New Hampshire, too. I know he spent a lot of time in Iowa. That was where I think, we put a lot of our resources in the campaign. But New Hampshire was a place that he went up and really kind of fell in love with in a lot of respects. So he is somebody who I think has a connection to people in New Hampshire. So I'm not surprised to see him, if the reports are true, to be heading up there tonight.
So I'm curious, Matt, there's, of course, still two other candidates in the race, including the former governor of his home state, his fellow South Carolinian Nikki Haley. Why not wait until the primaries shake out before making a decision?
Again, I don't have any inside information on that. But look, I think what we're seeing so far, I will say this, one of the bigger elements that kind of changed when we were in the fall was when President Trump started, I think, winning general election matchups against Joe Biden. We saw folks on the ground in Iowa, for instance, who really loved Trump, but wasn't sure that he could win. I think that took away an argument that we had and Nikki had and Ron had and others. And so it allows people to kind of go both with their head and their heart. I think that was one of those defining moments of the primary once he started doing that. Now, look, Ron and Nikki and, the polls said different things, but that was one moment that, I think folks in Iowa, especially in primary voters, it did shift things.
And Matt, I know that you are not working with Senator Scott now, that the campaign was suspended back in November. You're no longer in that role, but you were his right-hand man. You know him very well. What kind of relationship does he have with the former president? Why is he giving this endorsement?
Well, what he would often say in the stump is that they work together a lot. Trump signed in his opportunity zone legislation, which was probably the largest anti-poverty legislation in the last 50 years, that brought private money into some of the poorest communities in the country. He also signed into law, Tim wrote the personal side of the tax reform law that Trump signed into law in 2017. So there's a working relationship there between the two people. And, they have kind of a record from Trump's time in office of Tim kind of getting things through Congress and getting things done. And he would often refer to that on the trail.
Matt, of course, the campaign that Senator Scott ran was fundamentally different than the campaign that Donald Trump is running. Why do you think Senator Scott's approach did not resonate with more people?
I think what he said, they didn't necessarily say no, never, maybe not right now per se. But look, I think, he was somebody who spoke openly about the optimism that he has in this country and what he has seen in this country, the goodness of this country, using his own story as a backdrop to that, going from his grandfather picking cotton to watching his grandson, Tim, take a seat in Congress. And I think also, talking to folks about what their story was. I think what you saw, with Tim was a very hopeful, optimistic message. Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, no matter who he's campaigning for, himself, Donald Trump, anybody else, I think you will hear that same story too. That's just who Tim is.
Did you ever talk to him about the possibility of vice president role?
No, I never did. And so, I think that is something you'll have to ask him. I don't really have any inside info on that. But, we have a primary first. And so I think the first thing any of these candidates will tell you, and I would encourage him, is run through the tape in New Hampshire. If you're Trump or Nikki, you got to win, New Hampshire, got to run through the tape there. DeSantis is obviously heading down to his the home state of South Carolina. So I think that's the first step before you start kind of bantering about vice presidents.
All right. Matt Gorman, thank you.
Thanks.